Now we will look into the steps involved in conducting a systematic literature review. So basically, the steps to conduct SLR can be divided into 3 phases. The first phase is the planning, second phase conducting, and third phase is reporting. So for each of these phases, there are a number of tasks. Okay, there are a number of activities that I will detail out later. But the first part is the most important one, which is the planning. So the planning part is where we need to actually set the scope for the review. Okay, so under the planning phase, okay, because under the planning we are trying to set the scope for the review. So there are basically 2 things that we have to do. The first one is to formulate the review question. Okay, formulate the review question, and then we can develop the review protocol. So although it looks simple, okay, but it is not that straightforward. Okay, because one would think about how can we generate a question? What kind of question? Right? So this is important for us to identify, and this is where the planning phase take place. Okay, because we need to think about why do we need to do this review? Okay, what is the objective of the review? What are we trying to investigate? What are the topic of our focus or concern? So then we can come up with a review question appropriate to address the topic. And then, okay, roughly under the conducting phase, there are 5 major activities under conducting phase. Once we settle the planning, right, we move on to the conducting phase. So basically, the first thing is we need to search. We need to search the studies. We need to search the studies. This can be normally we use existing online databases, for us to find relevant studies, and then we have to perform selection, because not all studies that we retrieve from the databases are actually useful or relevant for us for our review. Therefore, we have to select, and then based on the studies that we have selected, then we perform extraction, and then at the same time we might need to think about the level of quality, the level of quality that those studies is having. So we need to assess basically the quality of the studies, and finally to perform synthesis of study findings. So this study the phase looks like in sequence, right? But sometimes actually when we come to the extraction data, sometimes there are things that we are perhaps updating in our protocol. So there are things that sometimes we have to get back to the previous stage. But of course, normally when we want to perform the study quality, we have to decide, we have to actually confirm in terms of the studies that we wanted to review, and then from that set of studies, then we can perform the studies quality assessment. Okay, and finally, under reporting is where we are documenting the review. Okay, because someone else need to read, so we have to disseminate the information, we have to disseminate the findings. So this is the most important part, where we need to properly document the methodology that we use, right, the results, the findings that we obtain from our review. So we have to actually put those in writing, and writing can be in the form of thesis, can be in the form of journal article, can be in the form of technical report, right? It depends on who will be your audience, who you are targeting to. or maybe you can submit the report to you can submit the paper to a conference. Okay, all right. Now so those are basically the three major phases, yeah, in SLR. So under the planning phase, remember during the planning phase, it is important for us to formulate a question. But before we could do that, okay, before we could formulate the questions, the most important thing is that we have to identify the need for review. Why do we need to do this review? Sometimes for postgraduate students, masters or PhD, a review is necessary. It is mandatory. Right? So sometimes we do a review because we wanted to conduct a research study, yeah, at postgraduate level. So there is a need for review. So when we have identified the need for the review, right, it can be based on your interests or on the research gaps. It can be from any problems that occur, yeah, that we would like to study further. Then we have to come up with a review question. So this is where we have to formulate the review questions. And then we will develop the review protocol. So basically the protocol is just like kind of a framework. A framework that will give us the structure about how the overall conduct of the SLR. Okay, so identification of the need for a review. This is important so that we can understand the state of the art of an area, right? So it can also help practitioners to use the evidence in their strategic decision making or improvement activities. So basically, when someone do a review, the findings from the review must be something that is useful. Okay, the findings from the review is something that maybe can help not only the researcher but also practitioners. Practitioners can be someone from the industry, okay, who might be interested or who might need to know, okay, what studies have been done so far about that particular area, and what can they learn, yeah, from that report. Okay, so in SLR, the most important part is that once we have the focus, so we need to specify what will be our review questions. Okay, so it's the most important part in any SLR. It is used to guide the search process, used to guide the extraction process, and your data analysis or synthesis of evidence is expected to answer the SLR's review questions. So it is important for us to formulate the question, okay, because this is it will be the guide. Okay, it will help us to actually provide the scope for the review. Okay, so how do we come up with a good research question or a good review questions? A good review question is something that is meaningful and important to practitioners. It can be something important to educators or researchers. Okay, it will lead to changes in current practice or to increase confidence in the value of current practice, and also will identify discrepancies between commonly held beliefs and the reality. Right? So the review questions really depends on the topic of our interest. Okay, and of course it has to be something meaningful. So normally we do review because review is an activity that use a lot of resources. Okay, it takes a lot of time and effort to read existing studies, to understand what the studies have been doing, to trying to systematically synthesize or aggregate all those studies findings. It takes a lot of effort. Okay, and therefore we need to really plan. Okay, why do we need to take this review? What is the objective, okay, what would be the contributions of the review, and what would be the important review questions that we would like to address in the review. So there are a number of techniques in formulating review questions. Okay, let's say, for example, if someone is doing a review to study how effective one particular treatment is. Treatment here can be anything. Okay, a treatment from software engineering perspective, we can consider, for example, maybe an introduction of a new method, a new technique, a new approach, a new model, right? Something that people develop. We can study how effective it is, for example. Alright, so let's say we are interested to study effectiveness of certain thing, okay, certain technology. Alright, so if that is the focus, Pettigrew and Roberts suggested that we can use PICOP, yeah, to help us formulate the research questions. Yeah, PICOP stands for population, intervention, comparison, outcomes, and context. We will see what each of these means. So let's say, for example, if you wanted to compare whether testing technique A is more effective as compared with testing technique B. So we wanted to see, then there are a lot of studies, for example, maybe there are a number of studies, yeah, that have focused on both testing technique A and B. So let's say we wanted to see, okay, to what extent A is good, or to what extent B is good, or how effective A, or is it B is more effective than A. And we can actually, let's say this is let's say we are interested to look at that area. Then we can formulate, yeah, we can formulate our review in such a way that we can define the PICOP. Okay, so what PICOP means? So PICOP here, P refers to population. So this is referring to the group of people, it can be referring to the group of programs or a certain area of interest. And then I refers to intervention. Okay, for example, here intervention is referring to certain technology or tool or procedures. In our example just now, the intervention is testing techniques, for example. And comparison, if let's say we wanted to compare, okay, the intervention with certain thing, and then if we wanted to have specific outcomes, so we can specify also what kind of effect, okay, that we are interested in to see. And then in terms of context, we can also define the setting or environment of the investigation. For example, whether we wanted to focus only on academia or industry. So this is one example of PICOP. Okay, and this is a PICOP from paper by Kitchener. Okay, they are conducting a systematic review on cross versus within company estimation cost estimation studies. So their population is software project. Intervention, they are looking at effort estimation model related to cross-company projects, and they wanted to compare with effort estimation model from single company project. So the focus is on the prediction, estimation, or accuracy. So having this PICOP will help them to actually focus on the research questions. So having this PICOP, their research question are this. Okay, for example, the first one, they are asking, what evidence is there that cross-company estimation models are not significantly different from within-company estimation models? What characteristics of the studies, datasets, and methods used in the study? Which experimental procedures is most appropriate, okay, for studies comparing within and cross-company? So having the PICOP will help us to formulate the research question. Okay, so it is not mandatory to use PICOP, but PICOP is just one tool. It is an optional, okay, it is an option, sorry, to use it or not, but it can help us to provide the context, yeah, provide a proper structure or framework in defining our research questions for SLR.